Hi, it's Jen with the CEO Project. We are continuing to unpack our stress responses. We have gone through fight, flight, freeze, and now we're going to unpack fawn, which I like to call the people-pleasing stress response. That is one where you might begin to yield to somebody else. If you're in a situation where you're trying to find a solution to something and you say, no, it's okay. We'll just do what you want to do. We've all done that. It's super common. But what happens is it might lead to resentment down the road, because if you continue to do that and you say, no, we'll do what you want to do over and over and over again, sometimes you might wake up and go, I really haven't done anything that I want to do, and I haven't asked for that, and now we're doing something that the other person wants to do over and over and over again, and it doesn't feel very balanced. So acknowledging that when you yield, when you fawn, you are giving that decision away, right? You are saying, okay, I'm going to forego my decision and forego what I want, and I'm going to just yield to what you want. And in some situations, it can be really helpful. And then in other situations, it might not be super helpful. So really assessing the situation of, if it might be something kind of short term and you're like, yeah, okay, we'll do this one for you, and then you might come back to a situation and then you say, okay, well, let's, do my option this time. Honestly, I think about it when, my daughter was really young, and there's the whole thing of everything we learned in kindergarten, which I think there might be some great value to. But when she was small, we were teaching her how to share, and she was an only child, so it's always a little tricky, as with one kiddo. But it's just saying, hey, you know what, we will do what you want this time, and then next time we get to pick something, or I get to pick something, and then you get, so going back and forth and beginning to have that ebb and flow. And that ebb and flow can be really valuable in relationships and relationship building, because you both have a voice and you both have your interest involved in that relationship. If it's just a one-sided relationship where one person just continues to get their way, and it's, the other person is ultimately a martyr for that person, they're not, maybe voicing what they want, and then maybe that other person isn't very considerate about what they want. In conflict resolution, there's something called the Dugan model, and it talks about how you can measure basically the care factor. The Dugan model measures the care factor of how much one side or one person cares about the other. If you have one person that cares about the other person's interests more, and they keep yielding, or they keep fawning to that other person, then that becomes a really imbalanced situation, and it can become an imbalanced relationship because it's very one-sided, it's lopsided. So it's really good to be able to acknowledge that and begin to, if you're somebody who continues to yield or fawn, because we also can say yield in a conflict resolution mode. I think it's really good to acknowledge that. And if you notice yourself building up resentment, then this isn't really leading to long-term, productivity. It's not leading into a long-term healthy dynamic or a healthy relationship, whether that's with a job or a partner. So it's good to be able to assess that. And if you're somebody that has a harder time voicing what you want, just know that when you're in a healthy relationship, you have two people that care about each other's interests. So going back to the Dugan model, you don't have this lopsided model of one person caring more. And if you do find yourself in a situation where you care way more than the other person does, then, that's something to evaluate, and it's something to really reflect on if that's the type of dynamic that you want in your life. And so I think it's a really good way to assess when we're talking about fawning or yielding. So think about, a lot of times now that we've talked about all of the stress responses, sometimes we tend to use these stress responses more in certain settings. So, and as different people, we might gravitate more towards one or two of these stress responses just innately and naturally than over others. And so think about that if you fawn more, or if you are, if you're a fighter, if you tend to get really heated, if you fly, that, you know, if you tend to fly and you just try to get out of there, which can also be called withdrawing. And then the freeze. I think, you know, that is probably a pretty natural one that we've all experienced, and we talked about that in our last video. But think about which stress responses that maybe you gravitate towards more. And we have all of them. They're part of our system, our innate system. But do you feel like one comes up heavier for you than the other, and in different settings? So in a family setting versus a work setting, and so on. So if you want to contribute to the discussion, you can go over to our Facebook page, and it's just the See Author Project on Facebook. And we'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on, as we have kind of unpacked all 4 of these stress responses, where does today's stress response fall into your life? And we'd love to hear more of your comments and feedback. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you continue to follow us and our work at the See Author Project. Thanks again.